Hello and good evening, everyone, and happy Wednesday to all of you guys out there. I certainly hope it is indeed a happy Wednesday. Another day of isolation, of quarantining, social distancing. But hey, we're social distancing, but we're keeping it together because we're here for yet another Paranormal Pop Culture Fireside Chat. I am Aaron Sagers, which you probably know that because you found this link on my page or someone's page that linked to this. And I am happy that you guys are here tonight. I'm very excited about the guest that I'm going to be bringing in a moment. And let me just go ahead and say hey to Jack, who's out there. Hey-o to you, my buddy Jack. Dawn is here. Big wave to you, Dawn. And Stacy also gives me a wave. Hey, Stacy, good to see you. And thank you very much, Stacy. You know why. I hope you guys, let me know how your guys' Wednesday is going. If there's anything exciting going on in your life, I'd like to hear about that. As you're kind of typing that out, let me go ahead and give a setup to my friend. Oh, wait, actually, before I do that, I did forget almost. I can't forget about this one. Remember, you guys probably know the drill by now. We are indeed sponsored by a book, and you should know this by now. And I want to go ahead and give a shout out to Dead Run by Mike Maddox. It's available only on Amazon Kindle for a mere $2.99, I believe. It's a novel that's suspenseful. It's got some horror elements to it. Dead Run, You Run or You Die, a book set in sort of a post-apocalyptic, well, leading up to the post-apocalyptic scenario of a world gone awry. It is kind of relevant and timely for these days, but it's also just a really good suspenseful book. And we thank them for being a sponsor of our little live streams that we're doing here. So that's Dead Run, available only on Amazon Kindle. I do want to say that, okay, well, nobody really has any news coming in other than Justin. Hey, hello to you, Justin. And Alessandra, good to see you as well. Thanks for hanging out. Okay, so this person, first off, let me just say, I met her for the first time in 2018 at Sage Paracon in the UK, an event held by MJ Dixon and the Sage Tribe, and just hit it off with this woman just right away. She is hilarious and just like a laugh riot, constantly making me laugh, but also an amazing pro and just a joy to watch work. Like one of those people that you are watching them do what they do, and you're like, okay, like I get why they're here on this scene, and I respect them for what they do, and I want to figure out ways to work more with them. She is an officer and a director of the Talking Board Historic Society, a paranormal researcher, and author of The Spirits of Ouija, 4 decades of communication. She is definitely one of the recognized leading communicators of the Ouija Practitioner since 1973, and really has her own approach to using talking boards, Ouija boards, and just a really talented woman. And I'm very excited to have her on the live stream tonight. Without further ado, let me bring her in. It is Karen A. Dolman. Hey, Karen, welcome to the Paranormal Pop Culture Fireside Chat.
Yay! Let's get into some fireside chatting here. Thank you so much, Aaron, for having me here. It's great to see you again. And hello to everybody that is in the chat room. I recognize some names in there. Yay! Good to see you guys.
I know we do have like a lot of good people out there, and they're all excited to hear about some talking board stuff tonight. Well, okay, before we dive in too much, I think it's worth kind of just taking stock of our attire for the night. We look like we're matching, but not quite. What are you rocking? What are you wearing?
Well, I have this really cool Ouija shirt. It's like a little sweatshirt thingy. And I'm wearing, is this cool, you guys? This is the Talking Board Historical Society pin. We have a few of them. This is the main one that we wear. You guys can buy them from us too at our website. And we always sell them at events. But yeah, just the Ouija shirt. And I've got all my Ouija paraphernalia or guys back here. And I got Ouija boards all over the place. How about you, Aaron?
Well, as it happens, I am also wearing the talking board pin. Sorry, I pointed the other side. Talking board pin. But this shirt that I'm wearing is actually a Batman Ouija board shirt that kind of really sums up a lot of elements of me, like nerdy and paranormal and spooky all together. And in fact, Karen, I was in London with you. We were spent several days in London together and in England overall together. And one day you guys went off and kind of did your own exploration, and myself and my friend did our own. And I picked up this shirt from Forbidden Planet, which is a comic book shop in London.
Gosh, now I remember when you said you got that shirt. Oh gosh, okay, it's all coming back to me, you guys. It's been a while.
I know. It's well, and I have not as many boards as you, but I do have the Crystal Gazer behind me, and then the classic Hasbro one as well. The right behind me, the one that's like sort of my utility board that I carry with me everywhere. It's like just basic, cardboard or particle board, and of course, I'm actually using this as a coaster right now underneath a drink of tequila. So yeah, that's my coaster right now.
I'll cheers to that. I'm drinking.
Yeah, right. Oh, look at you! You got a whole glass. I've got a Batman glass, but
I'm just having sparkling water with my fun straw.
Yeah, I've got a little. I didn't make a tiki drink tonight. It's just some tequila, some pineapple juice, and some OJ. So it's a nice little drink. Oh wait, actually, hold on. Well, first, we're going to get into this in a second, Alessandra. Alessandra is saying the pink Ouija board she can't find anywhere. We're going to get into some rare Ouija boards out there. And also, Stacy said, got her planchette material yesterday. Do I want you to make me a mask? Yeah. I mean, I don't want to impose, but if you're making masks, man, I'm totally down with it.
Wait, I would making a Ouija board planchette mask. Is that what you're making?
Yeah, which is a great idea. Such
God.
A creative idea. Yeah.
That's awesome, Stacy.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, sign me up, my friend. I very much appreciate that. Okay, so let's dive right in. We're talking about the talking boards. Go back to. Well, Ouija came along in 1820, 1850s, where Ouija board was
later.
A little bit later.
Yeah, 1890 was when Ouija hit the market. But I got to tell you this: in 1886, there was another board out there, and we know about it because it was given to President Grover Cleveland for his wedding day, and it was we believe it's the witch. It was the witch board. We believe it's one of the boards we have in our collection, but we believe it's a witch. It was called the witch board, and we know he got it because he wrote a letter back and thanked the company that sent it to him as thank you for this wonderful gift, but I don't think I will use it to consult the affairs of the country with it. It was that kind of thing. But so that's really when the Ouija board gets kicked off, was in the mid 1880s,
right?
And then people that were the Kenner Novelty Company, they're the ones that started up with the first Ouija board in 1891.
Yeah, and it's, I guess, I get confused sometimes because, in the 1850s, I guess, when spiritualism was first ramping up, there were talking boards or witch boards, and then the W.S. Reed Company is the one that gave President Grover Cleveland their board, which was a witch board. Yeah. So, but then Ouija itself comes along a little bit later. I'm not going to ask you to go through that much history, 50, 60 years of history, but I am curious. Something that you did through the course of the Talking Board Historic Society is really honor the mother of Ouija. And for me, Ouija as a company and as a product is really a story of American entrepreneurship and ingenuity, just from a business perspective, aside from a spirit communication device. And there's a lot of men that get credit for it, but a couple years ago, you 2014, I believe, you honored sort of a woman, the mother of Ouija. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it was actually 2015 when we had
15.
WouijaCon. That's okay, you were close. And when we had WouijaCon, we started talking about Helen Peters more and more because Robert Murch, who is the chairman of the board of Talking Board Historical Society, did a lot of research on this and really found the family and friends and relatives of this woman and found out, you know, from letters and the stories of what her evolution and involvement was with the Talking Board. So fast forward now to right before I saw you in 2018. That fall, a month earlier, we did what we call the Helen Peters event. And we actually found the place where her body was buried in a family plot, but she did not have a gravestone. It was several people buried there, but only like 3 names mentioned. And so we reached out to the family, and what we did is we raised the money. And a lot of you guys out there help us raise our money by buying our T-shirts and our pens and stuff like that. We were able to raise enough money to buy her a gravestone, and it's huge. And the family came out. We did a big celebration, and the gravestone, it's a big monument basically. And everybody's name that was not mentioned, the family members that were there, everybody's name was on there now listed. And the family was so gracious and thankful for the whole thing. And get this now, you guys, the cool thing about this, if that wasn't cool enough, they have a wonderful walking tour for famous women who are buried in that cemetery. It's the Fairmont Cemetery in Denver, Colorado. And what they did is they decided to put her on the list of the tour. So now people from all over the place are coming on this walking tour, and they're getting to see this specific headstone, I should say.
And it's, you know, the sort of the tendrils, the history of Ouija in America. We have, of course, Colorado. We have Salem, which was where the Ouija board came to be produced, I guess, at one point, right? And then we also have Baltimore, where the plaque is honoring the original kind of founders of Ouija. And so Ouija kind of has these landmarks all across the nation. But I want to talk about sort of your origin, your landmark, where you grew up, and sort of how you got connected to Ouija. I mean, there's so much rich history of the board itself, but I want to find out your connection to it.
Yeah, unbeknownst to me, any of this history, that's developed more recently through the work of the Talking Board Historical Society, Robert Merchant, many of the people there who are historians, and they dug up this information.
You're right.
But when I was younger, in 1973, when I first got my board from Santa Claus, I knew none of this. I thought one Ouija board was all they made. I didn't know there was all these variations of talking boards, is what they're called, or spirit boards. I mean, and like the crystal gazer that Aaron has behind him on his shelf that he got from us, that one's from the 1940s. So there's all these boards being made. And here I get mine in 1973. It was a Parker Brothers board. Parker Brothers at that point started manufacturing the boards. They took over the ownership from William Fold Company in 1966. So I'm just a few years into that, and now I have my Ouija board. I'll show it to you. This is my original board. It's actually, the model is at circa 1972, but mine came in 73.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that's my original board. It's in such great shape, and I have the planchette is actually in a box over there.
Anyway. Let me just ask, Karen, is that 1973 board, like the one I have behind me, is just basic cardboard, a particle board board.
And
Was yours
made by Hasbro, right?
Yeah, it's a Hasbro one. It's not a Parker Brothers.
And they sold to Hasbro, you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. So his is a lot newer than mine. So this model came out in 72. Mine was brand new in 73 for Christmas.
What's the material?
It's compressed particle board. So it's actually masonite. Well, we'll call it masonite. It's really masonite.
Okay, yeah. So it's like, it looks a little sturdier. Yeah.
It's very sturdy. I love it. This is just a sticker thing on it, you guys, in the front. But that is like my go-to board. I just love that board because it's what I originally had, not knowing there were all these different versions. And that came a lot later when I started collecting. But that's what got me into the board at a young age. Some friends introduced me to it, and then I asked Santa Claus for it for Christmas in 73.
Now, we share a similarity. And what's interesting about that board as well is, like, in 66, Parker Brothers bought Ouija from the Folds for a mere $1 million. $1 million, if I recall, which it was, at the time, it was the most that a game had been purchased. But according to, and then eventually that company was bought out by Hasbro. Parker Brothers was bought out by Hasbro in 1991. some reports say that Ouija has outsold even like Monopoly, right?
Yeah.
So it's definitely made a lot of money for them. I think they've made that $1 million back. But for you, like, so when you're in 1973, you're getting your first Ouija board. Uh, you were raised Catholic, right?
Yes, I was. That's absolutely right, Aaron.
And me too. And
Mhm.
yet, there's no way my parents would have given me a Ouija board for Christmas.
Wow. Yeah, my parents didn't see any conflict with it at all because first of all, they didn't believe it worked. Okay, that's probably where they just thought it was a game. They had them when they were children, and they just thought, wink, wink, this thing doesn't work. And I it immediately started working for me right out of the box, basically. But yeah, so there was no weirdness about that. I mean, I could go to church the next day and have my board that play with my board the night before. Back then, I would say playing with it because I thought it was kind of a game. Although it worked for me, it was still like, this is kind of strange. This thing kind of work, and I can talk to the dead people. Which is where it started, but it went so much further than that, as you know, as I started progressing with this tool over the years.
Well, talk a little bit about that. When did you realize that you did have a that you were you were skilled, that you had a gift with communicating, and how did you hone that skill?
Yeah, so I see, Aaron. I started out really young. I had an imaginary playmate. They said I had, and but it wasn't imaginary at all. So I was already being able to see spirit and communicate with them. So the board just became an extension of that. So I thought I put away my imaginary playmate to go to school. My mom said you probably shouldn't talk to people that aren't there. So I thought, well, this person is here, but that's okay. So I thought I put it away, but when the Ouija board was introduced to me, I realized I could still communicate. So I always knew that I was able to do that. The board just became my tangible proof with it moving and then getting the spelling and feeling the pull of the planchette became my tangible proof of another life, another dimension or spirits. So it was really more of an evolution over the years. And I would say it was in college. So we're talking now 1986. And I brought the board to school and I started communicating with some other friends of mine who were able to use the board. We started communicating to some deceased people and we really took it to a whole new level where we were doing a lot of seances, sessions for people, getting all kinds of information that we would not know and being able to validate and verify it. So from there, it continued. But what I realized is that if I could use this tool in a way that was more for either relieving grief, if somebody speaks to their deceased loved ones, or if it's for exploration or discovery, what the other dimensions are about, I realized there was something to it. I mean, that then I could use it as there's a reason or a purpose behind it. I was becoming a psychotherapist at the time, used the board a lot, and I just started exploring with what all I could communicate with beyond just the deceased. And that's when I stumbled into communicating with the angelic realms, extraterrestrials, animals, ethereal beings, and so forth. And today, I do so much more than that to this point to this day.
And how often do you actually kind of train with it now? Like, do you have sort of a exercise regimen with the board where just to keep yourself, in tune that you work with it? Yeah.
I think that's a really good question because I found that I got better and better at using it the more serious I took it and as I started developing myself spiritually, meaning I was doing energy work or I was learning about the chakra system or I was doing meditation. The more I started developing my own skills internally to feel centered, to feel strong and empowered, when I came back to the board, the results were that much better. And vice versa. The more I worked on the tool, I started developing ways to be able to let go, step aside, and allow the energies to come through even more so. Like, I mean, I never knew you could talk to animals. Who does that, right? So do you want me to tell that story? It's really
Yeah,
crazy.
please.
Yeah. So it was in 1996. What happened a few years earlier in 1989, I did a series of about 4 years. Two other friends and myself decided to most exclusively work on the board, talking to our higher selves. Now that was part of my development too. The more I could tap into my higher selves, and we use the board to help us do that and have these wonderful conversations with that greater part of ourself, our inner self, a part of ourself that's even larger than our corporeal existence, that really took me into whole new levels of connection. So that's where it started developing. And then the angels started coming through. So in 1996, I was sitting there with my partner and we were using the board, and we would sit at the corner of my table like I typically do on my shows. You can see how I do it. And I had this cat. His name was Hermes. He's a big fat orange cat, and he was very much alive. And he was sitting in a little rocking chair off to the side of the table. He loved to be around when I did the Ouija board. You guys, animals love the energy when you do this. I have people write to me all the time and talk to me about their pets and their Ouija boards. So anyway, I'm talking to my angel at the time on the board. She's spelling out things. We're having a great conversation. She says, "You're not going to believe this, Karen. Somebody wants to talk to you." I'm like, "Well, that's no big deal. I talk to spirits all the time." She said, "No, this is going to be different." So this is all spelled out on the board. I said, "Okay, bring it on." And so what came through, what happened was the planchette slowed down and went a different direction and moved differently. I could tell it wasn't my angel anymore because the energy changes. It started spelling out slowly, and it said, "Hermes cat, I love you." And I went, "What?" That's my live cat sitting right there in that rocking chair. He's not deceased. My angel comes back on. She says, "Yes, he wanted to come through and tell you that it's possible to communicate to him through the board." She said, "In fact, you can talk to any animals that are alive or deceased through the board, just like you talk to your higher self and you're alive." I said, "Yeah." She said, "So that's what you can do." So from that moment forward, it was January 26, 1996. I will never forget that date because it opened up a whole new world of communicating with animals.
Well, I mean, I think that's spectacular. And as, an animal lover and also like a dog dad of two, I think it's just really encouraging that, well, it makes sense. Like, even though I approach things from an investigative, like a paranormal journalist mindset, I do think animals have the purest spirit. So if anything is going to get, have another afterlife or whatever, it should probably be animals.
Well,
And it's arrogant.
They really come in to be our teachers and healers. They're master teachers and healers.
Yeah.
And people that have animals know that.
Yeah, and it's arrogant to think that we're the only ones that get a crack at, like, something beyond this. Speaking of animals, though, since you said it, I have to bring up this guy. Who is this, Karen?
This is my current cat, Bear. He makes appearances on my YouTube show sometimes, and he loves the board. He talks to me on the board right now, and he's alive, like I said, and he loves to be around my boards. And I'm surprised he's not in here right now. He'll walk through the shows and walk up and get next to me and say hi to everybody.
Right.
And
How do you deal with well, okay, so right around the time that you got your first board, so in the early days of talking boards and Ouija boards, there were stories of people that were supposedly told by the board to commit crimes, to hurt people, to kill people, but it seemed like those didn't quite impact the overall reputation of Ouija boards, or maybe didn't taint it entirely. But around the time that you got your first board, we had this scene. We had this from The Exorcist, and this is, of course, Reagan, Linda Blair, contacting Captain Howdy, aka Pazuzu, and the impact of this movie on the board's reputation. It really can't be overstated. It never really regained its status as this useful spirit communication device or even harmless parlor game. It was a bad thing, especially within pop culture.
Yep.
Do you think that reputation still lingers? Do you find that people are still constantly kind of spooked by the board?
Yeah, I do. And let me tell you an interesting fact about that movie. It came out on December 26, 1973. I got my first board on December 25th, 1973.
And your parents didn't try to take it back?
Not at all. They just thought, this is, that's what I really wanted. That's all I wanted for Christmas that year. So,
I mean, and it makes sense because I was, just shortly right after that. And at the point that I was aware, it was, at this point, the reputation was ruined. There's no going back. So just in the span of a couple of years, everything had changed for the boards. So what do you tell people that, and look, everywhere I go, honestly, people say, oh yeah, I'll use a K2 meter. I'll use a digital audio recorder. I'll use a spirit box or whatever ghost meter. What about the Ouija? Oh no, I'm not touching a Ouija board. I'm keep me away from that. What do you say to people that have that attitude?
Well, that's what it is. It's an attitude. It's a belief system that creates fear. And it's unnecessary because, as you said, as you pointed out, you're using those other tools. Maybe I call them new school. Mine's old school, Ouija, and the
Yeah.
new school, the electronic devices. But that's no different than doing, tarot cards or I Ching or throwing the ruins or using pendulums or dowsing rods. It's all a form of some kind of divination practice, and what I tell people is this: it's not to fight anybody on that, and everybody is allowed to have their beliefs. The deal is this: is that you it's what you believe is what you're going to receive, no matter what you're doing. If you want to go and looking for some ghost, that's probably what you're going to come out and finding. If you want to go and looking for something, maybe a spiritual experience, you're going to probably come out and have that instead. So it's really based on your beliefs. I never try to change anybody, but what I tell people is this: we don't need to give our power over to a piece of cardboard or wood. Instead, we're the ones doing the work. The board is neutral. The board does absolutely nothing. We do all the work. It's me. It's when I develop my skills, which we all have abilities, you guys. As I develop them, my work got better on the board, as we talked about earlier, and vice versa. It wasn't the board that did it. The board just became the permission slip, the excuse, the reason, the way, the channel, the vessel, the path in order to bring and do the work I can do. So take the board away. Can I do this work? Yes. And that's somewhere where I'm going more in my future, is working off the board.
And it's interesting to me. So Bob Murch, I've been friends with Bob for several years, and I remember watching one of his early presentations when he talked about sort of the questions that were suggested of, things to ask the board. And they're pretty much in line with what, standard operating procedure of what people ask using a K2 meter or digital audio recorder and all that. So it's different device, but same kind of questions.
Same concept, same queries, going about it. You're doing the same thing. It's just that now you've got old school or new school or whatever tools you're using. They're just tools, you guys. They're just tools, and that's my big thing here, is to say that's this board and what I have behind me back here. These are all just tools. These are just tools. That's all they are. We do the work. Now, electronic devices are a little differently, yet some people, those electronic devices work better for, because somehow they're a magnet, or they're more open and receptive to allowing it. So there's some interesting things, you can look at with those tools themselves. And how
Has there been any particular Ouija-stitions or myths out there that either you particularly wish to dispel? I mean, it's hard to fight people's opinions or belief systems, but anything that you especially like to just say, like, outside of the fact that it's just a tool, as you said, anything you're just like, all right, guys, like that part's a little bit ridiculous. Let's put a pin in that one.
Well, let's say this: the board rules are fun. I know Rick Schreck, who's the VP of the Talking Board Historical Society, came out with a beautiful T-shirt, and it has all the board rules on it. He put down all the board rules he can find. Don't always say goodbye. Don't ask when you're going to die. Things like that. Don't use the board in the graveyard. Well, I got to tell you, I've broken all the rules, and I'm still here. And I used to use the board a lot in the graveyard as a kid because it was, tantalizing. It was exciting. I don't need to do that now. I can be anywhere and tap into spirit. I don't need to be in the dark. Only with candles. So it's really about your beliefs, and that's what you're going to end up getting. One really interesting rule is that a lot of people that are younger using the board now, their first movie they might have watched, and I saw somebody here mentioned it, is Witchboard. Witchboard is a really clever movie done by Kevin Tenney, and he did something that nobody had done before. He put the Ouija board as one of the main characters in the movie, but he also created all these superstitions around the board. And if you use the board too much, the biggest one he created was called progressive entrapment. Next thing you know, you can't stop using the board. The board comes after you. Brilliant. You guys, this is Hollywood. This is exciting. Most of those rules you're going to hear or see or find or people talk about, or they're on the internet, they all came out of like Hollywood, or they came away of people's own Ouija-stitions. Now, that word was coined by Gene Orlando. He's also from one of the founders of the Talking Board Historical Society. He owns the world's longest website about Ouija boards and talking boards on the internet, the Museum of Talkingboards.com. Check it out. It's awesome. But he talks about Ouija-stitions there, and that's his word. And what he talks about is how people, there's something mysterious. You want to create some kind of order or rules around it, rules of engagement, if you will, so you feel like you have some kind of control over it. So a lot of the rules developed out of that. trying to develop a sense of control or power. And in fact, this board doesn't come with much rules. Instead, what it came with in the beginning were ideas or suggestions for using the board, such as use a cloth, wipe it off, sit across the table from a male, female, lady, gentleman preferred. One person asked the questions to avoid confusion, and little rules like that. But it wasn't really, they weren't called rules then. They were just called recommendations or directions. And then those started becoming, more equipped with all these other superstitions around it. And again, a lot of this came out of Hollywood and the hype you hear from it. And people love a good story to make it, sound peculiar and strange. But I have to tell you, this is just so normal to use a board. For me, there's nothing magical, mystical about it. The magic and mystical is within yourself, you guys. Bottom line, it's all within you.
Yeah, I definitely like that thought. And like, when you think about it in very human terms, like sometimes we apply all these mystical meanings to things, but it's, there's Morse code, there's various ways of communicating with one another when we can't use the spoken word, and it's just another way of communicating. It's like essentially like a code system, it's so I find it's funny that when people apply all these odd kind of connections to it, but everybody has their own, again, their own belief systems, their own kind of approaches to things. I do want to bring up, and we've talked about this before and pretty recently, that for me, when I've used the board, I've used it when I've done investigations. I've used it when I filmed some shows and whatnot. For me, it's not really something that is very responsive. I don't use it a lot, and it's like a muscle. You have to train it. You have to work it. Like, I appreciate that. So it hasn't really responded a lot for me. However, when I was with you after Sage Paracon in 2018, and we were hanging around England, we were in this hotel room with MJ Dixon and Susan Cummins and my friend Angel, and like we were, supposedly talking to a spirit in the room. And man, you were on fire. Like, it's probably an everyday occurrence for you, but this was the most impressive Ouija board session I've ever seen. And I have seen many throughout many years, and this was mind blowing. Like, where we were getting responses and verifiable, and I was just asking questions and writing it down and throwing it to you. And man, you were like hitting on all cylinders. Is that, I mean, in your long arc of history with the boards, was that just like commonplace, or was that notable for you?
No, commonplace.
Oh my God. Like,
most of my sessions, that was actually probably a shorter one, because most of my sessions, when the spirits start coming through, they will write for pages. I'll flip pages. I had a session the other day that went for 5 pages, and we're talking note sheet paper.
Yeah.
Right. It went 5 pages till the spirit was done talking. And so that's normal for me. This is what's happened to me over the years in terms of how I developed myself, my abilities. It's my abilities again that's doing it. I'm so open to allowing the energies to come through and communicate. And by the way, I do know who I'm talking to, because I've been working with these beings for years.
Do you, I mean, has there been an especially notable session, like even recently, where even with your skills, something felt especially like paradigm shifting? And I'm about to tee up something else here in a minute that goes into some weird categories. But before we get to that, like any other like kind of notable things where it was a paradigm shift for you?
Absolutely. Every time I sit, I'm going to say this, every time I sit down with my partner. Now, remember, MJ and Susan and I, we had never worked the board together. So that was working really well for me working with somebody new. That's because MJ and Susan are already open to the stuff. They already do their own kind of psychic mediumship work. And that helps when you come to the table, or the tool in this case. So for me, every session I have, I work with predominantly one partner right now, and we do work together. He's really good at letting go. So every session blows my mind. The level of the messages come through so poetically, so quickly, and it's always relevant. We might start with a question, and we don't get an answer maybe in the beginning, but they'll go through this whole lesson. I
Yeah.
call it lesson plans. This whole lesson for the day. Flip, 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 and next thing you know, it's woven. The question and the answer is woven through the whole story they give. So it just, I mean, things I'm blown all the time. In fact, the book I'm writing now is about these consciousness, all these different pieces of consciousness I've been able to communicate with over the years and what they have to say to humanity or just in general. It's just amazing stuff. I am mind blown it's life changing.
Yeah. I just mentioning Stacy mentioned in the comments Aaron Paul. I think we talked about this, Karen, but I did Aaron Paul from Breaking Bad. I filmed a show where I was able to work the board. I had some minor blips of some good responses, but nothing like you got. I just out of curiosity, when someone like myself works the board and it's just kind of moving around in a like just kind of circling without really landing on anything, is that like not connecting? Is that like when on my computer the little death spiral, it's just trying to connect with something? Or is it maybe my energy is not into it? In your opinion, what's going on when that happens?
Okay, I can give you guys a hint right here. It's a secret, okay? And it's not that's so secret. I talk about it all the time on my show. The reason why people don't usually get better with using this tool is they ask too many yes/no questions. You need to start asking open-ended questions where they have to spell. Once you can be patient with it, and that's going to take many months, weeks, years. I don't know. Some people can never get it. But most people, when I work with them, because I do teach people how to do this, I do workshops often. And I teach people how to get beyond that where you were, because you guys were doing yes, no. And I saw that with Paul, Aaron Paul. You guys were doing that thing. You weren't asking open-ended. And if you would have said, who are we speaking with? Let them spell a name. And if you can be patient enough now, you're going to get gibberish in the beginning, you guys. You're going to get things that aren't even going to make sense, but you got to get through that. If you can get through that stage and just practice asking open-ended questions, you're going to get a lot further with your board work. I did that as a child from the very beginning, not even understanding what I was doing, but I realized it was boring just going yes and no. I thought, no, I need to get details here.
Yeah. Well, let me say, as you know, when you're filming TV, sometimes it's like, all right, do it. All right, reset. We're moving to the next location. I'm not going to act like that.
And I'd be going on for, an hour straight.
Oh, the funny thing is that during that, I don't think I'm talking out of school. I don't care. I'll say anything at this point with this stuff. Like with that one, what was frustrating is when we actually, even though I have my own opinions about phenomena, I do think that you have to really let your body settle into a place and kind of like figure out the energy of a location. And the frustrating part about that is any time in that location we were able to like set down and really start to feel it, it was like, all right, we got to move to the next. It was like, no, we're just starting to get something. Yeah. Like, let's just be patient, because then it gets really interesting. Mm-hmm. But it's dollars and cents, and not so much about getting the best stuff all the time
and getting your chance to practice using the board when it's their money. You're limited, very much so, and that's just how the shows go.
Yeah, it is what it is. Well, I was kind of teeing up this idea about these paradigm shifts, and something that you talked about that I was just so fascinated by, partially because it aligns with a lot of my own ideas, but also I've not heard anybody talk about this before, is communicating with things that are not necessarily angels and not necessarily spirits of humans or ghosts, but other things. Go run with that, please. Tell me, who have you talked to?
Box, you guys. It started, like I said, with the higher self, and it moved quickly into the angelic realm, and then to extraterrestrials. And when the extraterrestrial first started coming through, I was like, what is this? This is 1989, 90, 91. I was a practicing therapist. I thought, this is way out there. There's no internet. Nobody go talk to about these things. I thought, this is just ridiculous. what could this be? I tucked most of that away and didn't come back to the extraterrestrials till more recently in the last maybe 15 years. But so what happens is I start talking to the animal, the cat, and then over the years it just started opening up. I started talking to wild animals that are alive, wild animals that are dead. We're talking cryptids. I've spoken to boy, I've spoken to trees. I talk to trees all the time. I mean, anything that has a consciousness, an ability to have an awareness. And we can't judge a consciousness and awareness through the human lenses and the way we see humanity. We have to judge it through what those beings are. So as Aaron said earlier, like the animals, that'd be egotistical to say that they don't have a right to have this abilities, because but by the way, they do, and they do exist in the afterlife. And they also, as you know, they communicate to you through body language, but they also can use this tool with the help of a helper. So what I've found over the years, if I can develop a really strong, I call them my gatekeeper, I call them the master or mistress of ceremony, I call it the one on the other side who's going to help me with the interpretations. So when my cat started talking to me, I had to figure out, oh, how's this working? I mean, my cat goes meow, meow. I don't think it talks words. I said, no, but what we do is we go in and help them interpret what their emotions are, what they're trying to convey to you. Your cat wanted to speak to you and just wanted to tell you how much he loved you. And so we do the best we can to translate it. So when I talk to the trees, it's the same way. I can talk to them on the board, and I can also talk to them off the board. But I've spoken to like a rattlesnake in my backyard. I've spoken to buffalo, dolphin. I've spoken to spiders. I mean, you can talk to anything that has a consciousness, but you got to be patient. Hummingbirds, everything, hemp plant. If there's an awareness and there's sentience about it, you gotta be patient with yourself and believe, and then you gotta allow that other helper to come in and help. And it's possible, you guys. It's possible.
So what's sort of the difference in how, if you can say, what is sort of the difference in how like a Sasquatch versus an alien versus a rattlesnake may sound? You know, like the way they use language or words. I mean, I don't know that I really think of a rattlesnake using the English language or any.
No.
So how does that sound in quotation marks? How does that sound different?
When they come through, each animal has a different, and same with my spirits that come through, different ones I talk to. They have what I call a spirit signature. It's definitely a vibration, and I feel it. And I learned it through the cats when the cats started coming through, and then talking to all these different animals over the years. So, for example, when a snake came through, this rattlesnake, again, you have an interpreter on your side, and there's a being that we call Papa. He just said, "Call me Papa," and he comes through the corner of my board. He enters down here when the planchette goes here, and I'm asking a question about the animals or cryptids. This is where it'll come through, and this is the energy, kind of like how I have my spirit guides. It's like the spirit guide of the animals or other beings, and they'll go down there, and he'll come in and help them interpret. And a lot of times he lets them speak directly, but he's still helping them with the spelling. So he's tapping into the snake, and the snake said something like, watch out for me. I come to, because it was in my backyard drinking on my waterfall I have. Full on rattlesnake, guys. Full on. You go back to my Facebook page and see some of those videos. It's crazy. I walk out and start filming it when it was long, but when it curled up, I got the hell out of there. But the snake said, "Look, I come to your watering hole often and I drink water." Now they're interpreting what he's giving to them. He says, and he said it was he. I've been coming here for about 8 years now. And he said, but know this, if you get too close, I will strike, because that is the nature of who I am. And I was like, okay, that's a good warning. Now, here's another fun one. We were talking, my partner and I, we were talking to buffalo. I just wanted to tap into the buffalo oversoul, okay? So when Papa comes in, he represents the oversoul of the animal kingdom. So that, when I just told you about the rattlesnake, that was a specific individual rattlesnake. I just wanted to talk to oversoul a buffalo, the buffalo consciousness, if you will. Again, my new book's going to be all about how to do this. So when you tap into the buffalo, they sound very much like the Native Americans. And they come through speaking that way. We stand tall and proud and strong. And they said, we so gladly give of our pelts and fur. We give of our bodies to the people you call your natives, because they respect us. And the grass so grandly lays down for us as the grass respects us. And they say things like this, and I'm like, okay. So we have a whole conversation with these different beings. Not too long ago on my YouTube show, we tapped into the consciousness of a live wolf. It was a live female wolf that was running around in Montana and got in a fight because it wanted for dominance or to be part of that tribe, and they didn't want her, so she had to go off and find her own. She told us all about the plight of a lone wolf, and went through this whole story. And I don't know much about wolves. Went and looked it up later. Every single thing she said was accurate. Like, whoa. So things like that happen when we talk to the animals. We really just want to get their perspective on life.
So what is what Sasquatch want? What do the aliens want?
Sasquatch is fantastic, you guys. So Sasquatch admitted that. And by the way, I'll preface it this way: it was Rosemary Allen Guiley. Bless her soul. She would come to my house often, and we would do the board, and her husband too. And one time, she wanted to have a whole session on Sasquatch because she was doing some writing about it with somebody else. Wanted to see what the opinion was, what they would say if we spoke to them directly. Sasquatch comes in. It came through directly. It was again the consciousness of the oversoul of the Sasquatch species, and admitted they are interdimensionals. And also said that, we really want to keep to ourselves. We don't like when you guys come around. We really want to stay to ourselves, our kind. We can respect you and see you from afar, but we ask that you too respect us. We really are private beings. They have a whole social system. They have families. And the interesting thing was this, Aaron. So Rosemary wanted to ask this creature, so what is it with the aliens and UFOs? It seems like UFOs are around when you guys are around. And the Sasquatch said back, well, that's a funny thing because we thought they were your aliens. And every time we see you, there's aliens around. So he just kind of reversed it on us when we were asking that question. There's so much more, he said. But you can talk to anything, again, that is consciousness, if you believe.
Well, and this is Stacy's question, which you kind of just answered, is do you believe in other planes of existence? And you most certainly do. There's more than just this.
I absolutely do. And I know Aaron and I have spoken about this before by ourselves, but definitely believe in parallel universes and multidimensional aspects to the human being. And so I feel like a lot of times we might be bumping into ourselves at different periods of our life and we just can't see them. I also believe that there's, we'll use this term, the best way I could do it. It's geometric patterns where worlds are stacked on top of each other, but they're like a dimension away. In fact, the deceased tell me often, they say, I'm right here. Because the only reason why you can't see us because I'm phased out of what you are able to see. Remember, our spectrum is like right here. There's a lot of spectrum we can't see, and so as you go further out, that's what we're bumping into. I don't think it's all just ghosts and spirits. I'm a person that's talking to all these different beings, and so for me, I hardly even talk to dead people anymore. It's mostly talking to all kinds of different levels of consciousness.
Just like it's worlds that are slightly askew of us, and
askew, I was just gonna say that. Yeah, it's just like twisted a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's borne out in nature too. That some animals, maybe they're aware on some level of us, but they're not seeing us, or we don't see the whole world of microorganisms, but they do certainly exist, and they're impacting us right now, even though we can't literally see them. So, yes. Is there anything, you mentioned Rosemary, someone that I certainly respected a lot and was fortunate to speak to on occasion. One of the areas of research that she really was on top of was the idea of jinn. Now, are there things that you just won't pursue or talk to because, it might stir up some sort of activity that you're just like, you know what, I just don't have time for that?
No, anything that wants to come through, because I have my boundaries and rules, and I have my bouncers, and I have all the spirit guides that help me. I will speak to anybody, anything that wants to come through that has something that can do it in a very calm fashion. And I won't just go out there like searching for demons. First of all, I don't even believe in demons, to be honest with you guys. I don't. I think anything that's been negative has been skewed by different types of institutions, and we place our fingers out there and say, oh, that's a demon. The truth is, I really think there's more negative things that happen in the heart of man than there's out there. But yeah, there's definitely some forces out there in different dimensions. And you could talk about the astral level, maybe some people that are stuck or energies that are stuck. I do believe in that, but I'm not the kind of person that says, oh, you can't talk to me. I'm like, yeah, sure, you can talk to me. I have rules. You can't come when I'm sleeping at night in my bedroom unless you're invited. You come on the board if you want to come in a timely fashion, and you take a number and wait your turn, kind of thing. And that's why you really want a bouncer to help you with that. But the bouncer develops after you start finding there's consistency in the message that's coming through for this being, and then you've done it over and over and over and over, many months to years, and then you can start trusting these characters that you met and are helping you with your work. So I think it's really important. So yeah, I will talk to anything that wants to come through. I've spoken to all kinds of beings. Let's say, for example, dragons. Dragons exist. They're in another dimension. Mermaids. They're in another dimension. There's all this folklore stuff we have in our cultures passed down from all the different different civilizations, as well as different cultures of antiquity and mythologies. A lot of that is real, you guys. They really do exist, and it's just another phased out dimension. And sometimes I see these beings too. So it's like I'm just kind of like developing everything I can and using all my resources while I do this work, basically.
Well, it's like too easy to just label that as like, wow, okay, crazy Ouija lady talking about dragons and mermaids.
Right.
But I don't take that approach, because my thing is like, I find arrogance so distasteful and saying, well, I know it all, so clearly those can't exist. Like, who the hell are we to say what can and cannot exist? We're constantly, even in just our day-to-day life, facing things that we didn't expect to be there or to happen. I think this current situation we're existing in right now, no one would have predicted. Well, maybe someone would have predicted it scientifically, but would not have reasonably thought we would be here right now.
No.
So just real quickly, and I want to wrap up by talking about the TBHS, but we were, before we came on, I was playing the Morrissey Ouija board song, and I can't sing it because I don't want to get a cease and desist or takedown notice from Morrissey. But the Ouija board, like, I want to talk to you. I happen to really love that song, and there's been so many elements of like Ouija pop culture or Ouija lore that's emerged. Any favorites for you?
Well, I love that Norman Rockwell picture. I always go back to that one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because that one was on the the magazine, and it was just fantastic. I love the fact that just Ouija's in everybody's lives. I love the fact that there's Ouija rugs you can buy now, Ouija tables. People make Ouija stuff all the time, Ouija clothes. We've both got our Ouija shirts on.
Yeah.
I have pants and socks and hats, and I just love everything Ouija. Ouija purse, etc. Yeah, there you go. Ouija.
I love this thing. It's not a real deal, but like that Happy Meal kind of mock-up that Newt Clements did a couple years ago was a pretty great one.
I remember that going around the Facebook for a while there, social media.
Yeah.
I just think it's great. This is fun. There's like a little miniature Ouija keychain.
Oh, yeah. Could you work on something that tiny?
And it does, by the way, it does work. You can use it. I have a little one back here you see where you put your finger on it. It can work. I want to show you my all-time favorite Ouija board.
Yeah.
This. Ta-da!
Okay.
It's a paper sack, you guys. This works just as well. This is my planchette, a little trip lid. This is my all-time favorite. See, and it moves around. It's great. So
why is it your all-time favorite?
Because I made it on a fly. I was teaching a course. And I said, okay, I'm gonna take this paper sack, and I just was chatting to people about what I was doing. And just all of a sudden I go, boop, partner, I go, watch this now. And everybody's like, what? You mean a paper sack works? I go, you guys, everything works. That's why I love that.
I do think it's worth pointing out that Stacy said both Susan and MJ said she should have been at Sage Paracon. Now she knows she was meant to know this being, Karen Dahlman. I think
absolutely, Stacy. Go. Aaron's going to be here this next year. I was there last year. Aaron's going to be here this year. Go. It is just a hoot, is it not, Aaron?
It is. It's a great event. Well, and before I let you go, I want you to talk a little bit about your work with the Talking Board Historical Society, and also the Ouijazilla and the world's largest planchette, and anything else that you just want to say about TBHS.
Yeah, TBHS, you guys, tbhs.org is a fantastic group. We're all collectors, historians, researchers. We just really try to bring forward the facts about the Ouija board and talking boards as well. We want people to understand that there's a rich history here. It's more than just what meets the eye, what you think. And we do get into the Ouija stations and stories. So recently, it's the brainchild of Rick Schreck, who is the vice president of the TBHS group. He created the world's largest Ouija board. There it is. And planchette. You guys, that planchette is 15 feet long. It really works. We released it in Salem, Massachusetts last year. It was there for just the weekend, and we took it down. Now, let me tell you where it's going to be. We're taking the world's largest planchette to Michigan Paracon. So if you're coming out to Michigan Paracon in August this year, Aaron's going to be there. I'll be there. And so will some of the TBHS people. And we'll have the world's largest planchette there. But I really enjoy being a part of this group. We're a diverse group of people with the Talking Board Historical Society. A lot of people are artists. I'm a researcher, and of course, I'm a practitioner. I use the board. We all collect. We're all very, very passionate about it. So yeah, check us out. You can read a little bit more about all of the members that are there. Every single one of us are directors, and I'm actually an officer now too. And Robert Murch is the one who put it together with a few of the earlier collectors, and it's a great group. We do a lot of fun things, like I told you about the Helen Peters gravestone. We do stuff for the public too.
And Karen, where can everyone follow you, track your work, and even reach out and say hi?
Well, thank you so much for asking. Come to KarenADahlman.com. Put that, yep, there it is, KarenADahlman.com. Put middle initial in there. That goes to my website, which is kind of a gateway going into everything else. I am on YouTube. Join my YouTube, subscribe there. I do videos all the time. Aaron's been on there as well. Or actually, he's going to be on a show coming up. He's been recorded with me, but I have all kinds of fun stuff on there about the Ouija board. Really try to give you the history and help you learn to use it yourself. And I interview great people that are doing this kind of work in the paranormal, supernatural, spiritual, all that stuff. And then join my newsletter, because you join my newsletter, you'll know where I'll be next, speaking or teaching, or the cool shows that I'll be on like this. But it's great having everybody here. I'm sorry I couldn't follow the chat, you guys, but thank you so much for joining us. Great. It's wonderful to have you guys. And thank you, Aaron, for having me.
Yeah, of course. And I think everybody, even though we'll wrap this up, people can reach out to you and say hi and continue the conversation. And on that note, I'm going to go ahead and just say, guys, I appreciate you guys joining us for another Paranormal Pop Culture Fireside Chat. It means so much that you are here, that you're hanging out. And I kindly ask, you guys should, I'm just going to say, give me a shout at aaronsagers.com. And if you're not following me on Twitter and Instagram, please give me a follow and say hi and interact. I love hearing from you, and I love talking to you and finding out. I'm also like a social media nut, so I like finding out what you guys are up to. Also, that Nightmerica is the podcast that I am hosting. iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. Myself and Britt have new episodes dropping every Wednesday. Had one just drop today where we talk about weird things that have happened on bridges, and I even tackle the massive subject of Mothman, and I should have asked Karen about that. So there's that. And then also kindly ask, I am a creative. I'm out there. I'm trying to make this stuff happen. I'm actually going to launch a Patreon page, I think. I feel like it's about time to do that. In the meantime, I am on Venmo, venmo.com/AaronSagers. It's sort of my virtual tip bucket for the moment, so I can keep doing this stuff. And I'm excited to do it. But I'm going to talk no matter what happens. You can't stop me from talking. So that said, let me just, Stacy has a Mothman story. I want you to tell me. I don't know that I'm going to be able to hear it right now, but you need to send me your Mothman story. Guys, you are awesome. Thank you for being here. I love you so much. And have a great night. Take care of one another. Take care of yourselves. Stay sane. And also, importantly, stay weird.